Hello everybody, Graham Morris here. Welcome back to my new YouTube channel, Muay Thai Athletic Performance. Today is going to be a video discussion on conditioning in Muay Thai, and we're going to talk about energy system development as well as general versus specific means of training. Some of these terminology we use today can be quite complex. I'm going to try my best to simplify this so that everyone can have a better understanding. And it's going to be some of my thoughts on how we can enhance performance in Muay Thai. Okay. Now, before we start, I'm going to talk about specific versus general means. Okay, and why this is important for conditioning and for enhancing your performance. This probably makes sense, but Muay Thai, specific things to that are things that involve punching, kicking, kneeing, elbowing, clinching. Okay, anything that occurs in Muay Thai is specific. Okay, it resembles the competition exercise. So we can use methods such as sparring, hitting the pads, clinching, hitting the bag, drills, shadow boxing. Okay, anything that resembles Muay Thai, we can use this as a conditioning method. Okay, to get better at Muay Thai and to get better conditioned. Now, why is this important? It allows us to work on skill development because not always, but mostly, the person that's more skillful quite often wins. Okay, obviously there's a few other factors, but if you're going into a fight, you hope that you have better skills than the other fighter. Okay, because it's going to help you a long way to having that chance of winning. Because let's face it, this relies off one of the main principles of training, which is the principle of specificity, with other things like overload and progression and things like that. They're also important, but the principle of specificity is really important. If you want to get better at Muay Thai, you must practice Muay Thai. Okay, so that means a lot of these conditioning methods that you use should be specific in nature if you want to get probably your best results. But that being said, we can still use general modes of conditioning, and this means it doesn't resemble the sport or the movement seen within the sport, and this could be things like running, because if you're running in Muay Thai, it's probably not, things aren't going well, but that's a bit of a joke. But running, skipping, assault bike, cross trainer, battle ropes, swimming. Okay, these are general means of conditioning. Okay, but they can also be useful because they can provide a mix-up from Muay Thai. They can help reduce monotony. Let's face it, if you're just doing Muay Thai day in, day out, sometimes your body, you want to do something different just for the change up, okay? Your brain wants to try something different. Just mix it up. That's why a lot of people like to do running, okay? They might like to run to get out, clear their head. Perhaps they like to swim, okay? But it can also reduce overload on the body. Okay, if you're just punching, kicking, kneeing all day, and you're just working through these planes of motion over and over and over, sometimes certain tissues and joints may get tired and stiff and cranky. So if we can do these general forms, take our body through different movements, okay, it might provide variability, and maybe your body's a little bit less likely to break down. Okay, now I want you to remember what's specific and what's general, okay, because this is important when I talk about energy system development a little bit later on. Okay, so these are the two main modes of conditioning. Energy system. Now, in the sport of Muay Thai, obviously, traditionally, is either 3 rounds or there's 5 rounds, and there's 3-minute rounds predominantly. Okay, but during this time, there's 3 main energy systems. All 3 energy systems are important in Muay Thai. Okay, all 3 are very important, and they may be dominant depending on what's occurring in the actual moment of the sport. Okay, now there's a lactic energy system, there's a glycolytic energy system, and there's an aerobic energy system. And the lactic tends to be the short-term energy system. Okay, it's really important for explosive movements such as the knockout shot. Okay, now this is the least trainable of all 3 energy systems, but obviously having an explosive power is really important because it can help you get the win. Okay, now it's also trainable, but not as trainable as the others, but you can still improve it. Okay, but today when I'm talking about energy system development, I'm predominantly talking about the 2 other ones, the glycolytic energy system, which is the medium term one. Okay, and this is kind of when the intensity remains very, very high, or your body is not able to use oxygen to produce ATP or energy. your body will start to rely on the glycolytic energy system so that you can continue to meet those the intensity demands. But at some point, people like to talk about lactic acid, which is probably not the wrong term. But what happens is your body can no longer meet the demands, and you have these byproducts, which will eventually slow you down. But with training, we can enhance the ability to buffer these byproducts, okay, so that we can kind of prolong training in these intensities, okay. And this might occur during flurries or repeated high output moments, okay, when it's just like you continue to grind, okay, it happens in a fight. Now, with the aerobic energy system is the long-term energy system, okay, and it's the most trainable of all three energy systems, much more trainable. You see, the glycolytic energy system is also trainable, but not to the degree as the aerobic energy system, okay. The aerobic energy system is much more trainable than any other system by far. Okay, it's important for maintaining pace in a fight. It's important for recovering between rounds. It's also important for recovering between high intense moments. The ability to have a high aerobic capacity is really important so that you can get hours and hours and volumes of training in. Okay, now, all these three energy systems will play a part at some point in the fight and all need to be trained. But when to train each one, how much we focus on each one will depend on a lot of different factors. But I'm going to go into this a little bit, okay? But I just want you to know that the aerobic energy system is the most trainable by far, okay? Now, if you look at this here, this could be confusing for a lot of people because it's quite anatomical and physiological in nature what I'm talking about. But I want you to think about these are adaptations that occur from either glycolytic or aerobic adaptations, okay, from energy system development. Now, when we train at different intensities, okay, we're going to get different adaptations, okay, and these adaptations could either be central, which means predominantly means changes to the heart, or it could be peripheral, which means changes to the muscular tissue or the vascular structure. Okay, now these are not even all the adaptations, but as I was saying before, different intensities are going to give you different adaptations. Now on the left here, these are caused by predominantly aerobic adaptations. Okay, so increasing the left ventricle of the heart, increasing the thickness and the strength of the ability of the heart to pump blood around the body, increasing red blood volume and hemoglobin mass. These things can lead to things like increased cardiac output and maximal stroke volume, decreasing resting heart rate, things like that. This is typically aerobic adaptations, okay? And they'll occur in that lower intensity to mid intensity, okay, of training. Now, on the right here, these peripheral adaptations, these are also a mix of aerobic and glycolytic adaptations that occur. But what's important, I want you to understand, is that different conditioning methods, I might go into this a little bit later, but when we look at, if we look at these adaptations here on the right, we've got mitochondrial density, oxidative function, capillary density, aerobic glycolytic enzymes, the AVO2 difference. These are fancy words, but basically, if we look at glycolytic energy system adaptations, it's going to be a couple of these ones on the right here, the peripheral. There's also some from the aerobic adaptations, but the glycolytic adaptations are just peripheral in nature, whereas the aerobic energy system adaptations can be central and they can be peripheral in nature. Okay, this is important to remember. Glycolytic energy adaptations are peripheral in nature in some upcoming slides. Okay, and essentially energy system development is improving energy production and energy utilization to a degree. Now, my thoughts. Sorry if that was a little bit technical in the background. A lot of coaches might understand it, but if you're just an athlete, they might not. But I'm going to try and simplify this down. In my opinion, I think everyone's opinion, get as much conditioning through specific means as possible. This will make you a better fighter. Okay. With that being said, I think that makes sense to everyone. But sometimes I'll see people do hours and hours of road running, which is not, I'm not going to say it's bad, but you don't need that much road running, especially for a lower level fighter. Spend more time getting better at your sport. Or that low intensity running Okay, you might use the same intensities doing things like shadow boxing, kicking the bag, pad work, breaking up certain things to get better at the sport of Muay Thai. Really important. With specific training, don't just always do your traditional 3-minute rounds of everything, because this doesn't maximize the adaptations of each energy system. We need to get the balance of each thing. For example, you might do bag work for 10 minutes, okay? Because this is going to improve things like aerobic capacity. Or maybe you're going to do all out, hard as you can for 2 minutes with complete recoveries, because that's going to improve things like aerobic power, which is really important during a fight. But then you might want to, okay, we need to, at some point closer to the fight, we need to work on things like glycolytic capacity and glycolytic power, because we need to be able to push through this pain and get better at ability to buffer these byproducts that slow us down. So we might do like 1 minute all out, hard as you can on the bag with incomplete recoveries or complete recoveries, depending if you want to work power or capacity, okay? But you might do these things so we can maximize this energy system development as we get closer to the fight, okay? So don't just stick to traditional 3-minute rounds. Now, I'm going to talk about these different methods at a later date. So if you can't get your head around them right now, it's okay, because I'll talk about this in the future. As I said before, the aerobic energy system is highly trainable compared to the glycolytic energy systems. Also, the aerobic energy system adaptations last a lot longer, because some of those adaptations are central in nature and as well as the capillarization around the muscle. So changes to the heart net. These adaptations stay a lot longer compared to, say, enzyme activity, increasing glycolytic enzyme activity. This might only hang around nowhere near as long as these central adaptations. Okay. As I said before, a lot of these peripheral adaptations are specific to the tissues used in the conditioning mode. Okay. We'll talk about this in a second. So this means this is not completely rigid. Okay, obviously there's going to be times we don't do this, but these are my beliefs. If you're going to use general modes of conditioning, okay, things like road running, things like bike, okay, stick to more general, to more aerobic intensities. Stick to lower level intensities, because as we said before, that's going to give you central adaptations to training, okay, and so it doesn't need to be specific to the working tissues, because you're still getting changes to the heart and stuff like that. So if you're going to do general modes of conditioning, do lower levels intensity, stick to more aerobic zones. However, I believe if you want to do glycolytic training closer to the fight so that we get better some of those adaptations that are important for the fight, I think we should stick to more specific modes of training. Okay, so if you want to do things that are really, really, really high intensity to get the best transfer, use Muay Thai activities to get that transfer, because a lot of those adaptations are going to be specific to the working tissues. Okay, so if you're going to do that hard work where everything's burning, you want it to transfer to things like punching, kicking, kneeing, the things that occur in a sport. Okay, there's no real point getting highly specific doing. Let's use something, for example. There's no point doing a really, 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 really high glycolytic things on the bike, okay? Because that's just going to be specific to cycling. There is it's going to be a little bit of transfer to Muay Thai, but not like doing Muay Thai. So if you want to use general modes, I believe you can do more aerobic work. And if you want to use glycolytic work, stick to more Muay Thai work. With that being said, you can still do Muay Thai aerobic work as well. Okay, but I believe if you can do really, really high intense work, stick just to Muay Thai conditioning predominantly. Some people might want to do a little bit of sprints in the assault bike, and that's okay for a little bit of icing, but stick predominantly to Muay Thai work if you can, because your transfer is going to be much more specific. And now with your aerobic energy system, you can choose either general or specific modes. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Okay, now further away from a fight, I would stick to more aerobic training, and then as you get closer to the fight, I'd start to focus on the glycolytic energy system. Okay, just sprinkle that in towards as you get closer to the fight. So I'd go focus a lot more on the aerobic energy system because it's much more trainable. As you get closer, I'd start focusing on more of the glycolytic a little bit, sprinkle that in. Just remember, it's really, really hard on the body. But and I'd be, obviously, as we get closer and more to the fight, you want to be more specific anyway. And from further away from the fight, you'll be putting in general modes of conditioning just to get a bit of a break. And that's what I said, general specific. Thank you guys. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel. I hope this makes sense and I didn't harp on too long. I try to simplify it the best that I could. If it doesn't, some things don't make 100% sense, please reach out to me. Also, I have a thing called Fight Club. So if you're a Muay Thai athlete and you want to take the guesswork out of your training, I have programs out that cover your strength needs, your power needs, your mobility needs, as well as your conditioning needs. And you can pick and choose what works for you depending if you're out of fight camp or if you're closer to fight camp, or you just want to get, you're an everyday person that enjoys Muay Thai and you want to get more conditioned towards the sport. Take care.